Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Patience. So today we are going to be making this beautiful off-shoulder top with an elastic waist tulle skirt. So before we get started, kindly click the subscribe button. If you have done that, let's get into it. So I'll be using this lycra fabric as a lining for the top, and as you know, it is a stretchy fabric, and this is 1 yard. And I'll also be using this lace, and it is also stretchy, and it is 1.5 yards. And I'll also be using this tulle fabric. It's a dotted tulle, and it is 10 yards. So I've gone ahead to mark this line. It's like my chest line, so I'll be marking my chest measurement here. That's the front chest width. So, and you can use your shoulder measurement. So what I'm using is 8 inches, and I'll minus 4 inches for my off shoulder measurement. So I'll mark my half of my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches, and then I'll mark my bust point and my waist point, that is 17 inches. And then I'll mark where I want my top to stop, that is 23 inches for the lining. So I will not be adding a hemming allowance here on the lining. For the lace, I am going to make the length 25 inches. So I am just going to extend the lines, and remember I took out 4 inches for my off shoulder. So right now on the armhole line, I'm going to mark 1/4 of my bust circumference, which is 10.5 inches, and I'll add 1 inch for side seam allowance. And on the waistline, I am going to mark 1/4 of my waist circumference, which is 9 inches, and I'll add 1 inch also for side seam allowance. Now on the hemline, I'll mark 1/4 of my hip circumference, which is 11 inches, and I'll also add 1 inch for side seam allowance. So I'm going to connect it this way, and I'll cut it out. So if you want the top fitted, then you don't need to add the 1 inch for side seam allowance, since the fabric is stretchy. So this is it. I cut out 2 for the front and the back piece. And remember, I used the stretchy parts for my circumference measurements, as you can see. So this is the front and the back piece, and I am going to cut this out on the lace fabric also. So I've done that. And the lace is longer than the lining with 2 inches. So I made the lace 25 inches. So I have my lining and my fabric. So what I'm going to do is I'll place good sides this way, and I'll pin it down, be sewing by the 1 inch for side seam allowance. So before I do that, I am going to be adding a dart on the back piece. So I'm adding a dart just to avoid gaping at the back of the neckline. So I'll mark my bust span measurement this way, and I'll be using length 4 inches for the dart, and I'll use 1 inch for the dart. So I'll mark 1/2 inch on both sides and create my dart. So I am also going to mark the dart on the other side. So I'm going to place good sides this way and pin it down. So I'll take in my dart just on the back piece, and I'll sew the 1 inch for side seam allowance. I've done that. I've joined the sides, and I also took in the dart also on the lace fabric, as you can see. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll place good sides together this way, because I'll be joining the lining and the fabric. So I'm going to align it and I'll pin it down. So in case you're not using a stretchy fabric, then you will need to add a zipper allowance to the back piece. I will also pin down the armhole area. And I'll sew by 1/2 inch all through, also on the armhole area. So I have done that, as you can see, and I made sure I iron it. And I ensure the darts are aligned on the back piece. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark 1/2 inch on the armhole area for the sleeve, and I'm going to measure the rest. So what I have is 30 inches and my round shoulder measurement is 47 inches. So I'm going to minus the 30 inches from the 47 inches, and what I'll have left is 17 inches. So I'll use the 17 inches to cut out my sleeve, that's both sleeves. To cut out my sleeve from this line, I'm also going to minus the 4 inches for the off shoulder, and what I have left is 25 inches. So I'm going to leave the hem this way. Now from this line, I'm going to place my tape this way from the 4 inches, and I'll mark 8 inches for half of my armhole measurement. And for my wrist round, I'm going to mark 4.5 inches, and I'll add 1/2 inch for side seam allowance. So on this line, I am going to mark half of my armhole measurement, which is 8 inches, and I'll add 1/2 inch for side seam allowance. So on this line, remember I got 17 inches, so I'll be using 17 inches for both sleeves. That is 47 inches for my round shoulder measurement minus the 30 inches. So 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. So since my fabric is folded into 2, I'll divide the 8.5 by 2. So that will give me 4.25, and I'll add 1/2 inch for sewing allowance, and I'm going to connect it this way. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this line by 1 inch. So I'll add 1 inch for hemming allowance. So I've cut out the other sleeve, and the next thing I'm going to do is to hem the 1 inch. Do that on both sleeves, and I'm going to sew on the 1/2 inch for side seam allowance. So I've done that. I've joined the side seam, and I've also hemmed the 1 inch. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the sleeve to the dress. So I'm going to align the armhole this way. I'll make sure the side seams are aligned, and I am going to pin it down and sew by 1/2 inch. And I'll do the same thing on the other sleeve. So I have done that, and it came out really neat and beautiful. So the next thing I'm going to do is to design the neckline. So I cut this out from the edge of the lace, and it is 1.5 inches. So I joined it by 1/2 inch. So the width is my round shoulder measurement. So I'm going to sew it round the neckline. So I'll place good sides this way and pin it down. and I am going to sew by 1/2 inch around the neckline. So it is going to come out this way, and I'll also sew on 1/2 inch to secure it. So I've done that. I sewed on 1/2 inch and I fold it and sew on 1/2 inch again to secure it. So I joined the lining and the fabric together. I stitched like 1 inch on the side seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to serge the edge of the lining all through. So this is it on the good side. It came out really beautiful and really neat. So that is it for the top. Now to cut out the tulle, I am going to be using this satin fabric, and it is 1 yard. So I've gone ahead to cut this out, and it is 21 inches, and I'll use 1 inch to hem. So my fabric is folded into 2, and this is the front piece of the skirt. So what I'll be using is my waist circumference times 2, that is 36 times 2, which is 72 inches. So I'm using 36 inches on the front piece, and I added 1 inch for side seam along. So I used my waist measurement times 2 because I am going to gather the waist. So this is the front piece, and it is 36 inches. So I cut out the same for the back. So I'm going to place good sides this way, and I'll sew by 1 inch for side seam allowance, and I will hem it with the 1 inch. So I've done that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is on the waist, I am going to use the longest stitch on my sewing machine to sew on 1/2 inch round the waist, and I'm going to gather it, and when I gather it, I'll make sure it is up to 44 inches for my hip circumference. So I've done that, and I used my hip circumference because I am going to be adding an elastic band on the waist. So the elastic band is going to give the waist its shape. So for the tulle, remember this is 10 yards, so I'll be cutting out 15 inches. So I'll mark 15 inches for the first layer. So if you want the tulle really short, you can use 10 inches. So I am going to cut out these 15 inches all through the 10 yards. So after doing that, I'll cut it out, and it's going to be for the first layer of the tulle. So for the second layer, I'm still going to use 15 inches, and I'll cut out another 15 inches for the second layer. So I'll be using this first 15 inches for the first layer, and I'll be using this second 15 inches and the third 15 inches for the second layer. So the second layer is going to be 15 inches by 20 yards, and the first layer is going to be 15 inches by 10 yards. So this 2 is going to be for the second layer, and this is for the first layer. So for the first layer, I'm going to use the longest stitch on my sewing machine to sew on 1/2 inch all through the 20 yards and gather it. And when I gather it, I'll make sure it is up to 44 inches. So for the second layer, I am going to join both ends by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to place good sides this way and sew by 1/2 inch. So I'll have these 2 for the second layer. So after doing that, I am also going to use the longest stitch on my sewing machine to sew on 1/2 inch all through the 20 yards. And I'll gather it and make sure it is up to 10 yards. So I've done that. And after I gather it, I stitched on the gathers to keep it in place, and I ensure it is up to 44 inches. So that is it for the first layer. The second layer, I did the same thing. I stitched on the gathers to keep it in place, and this is the 10 yards. So if you want the tulle really full, you can make the second layer 25 or 30 yards. So the next thing I'm going to do is to join the tulle and the skirt. So I'm going to place it this way. The good side of the skirt and the wrong side of the tulle. So I'm going to align it this way. Align the waist. I'm going to sew by 1/2 inch all through. So I have done that. So the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the second layer. So I joined both ends. Now I am going to place good sides this way. And I'll stitch on 1/2 inch all through. So I've done that. I've joined the second layer of the tulle, and this is how it came out. So I've gone ahead to cut out the waistband. So the width of the waistband is my hip circumference, that is 44 inches. So the length of the band is 4 inches. So I folded 1/2 inch on both sides and fold it again. So I left 1/2 inch that I'll use to join it this way. So after doing that, I am going to attach the band to the waist with the 1/2 inch. So I'll sew on the 1/2 inch all through. So I've done that. So after doing that, I'm going to use the other 1/2 inch to cover the raw edges this way, and I'll stitch from the good side. And I'll leave about 1.5 inches that I'll use to pass the band through. So I've done that. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to attach the band. The width I'm using is 25 inches, so you can stretch the band on your waist to get your measurement. So I'm just going to join it this way. So I marked 1/4 inch on the wrong side, so I'm just going to use a safety pin to pass it through. So after doing that, I'll sew on the 1/4 inch and I'll stitch the 1.5 inches. So I've done that. So after doing that, from the edge here, I am going to sew on 1/2 inch all through. So I'm going to stretch it out when I'm sewing, just to keep the band in place. So we have come to the end of this tutorials, guys. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and click on the subscribe button, and also turn on the notification bell to be updated when I upload a new video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.